All right, I guess we're going to get started this morning. Make sure to help yourself to some treats. We brought some stuff for you today. We're going to talk today about the Strive for Five program and some rules and regulations in the food service department, but that apply to all of us in the dining rooms. So we're going to start with Strive for Five. We're going to talk about what the Pinnacle Survey is and why we have the Strive for Five program and what the Strive for Five program is. We're also going to look at why it's important for everybody and what we can all do together to help make it successful. So the Pinnacle Survey is, Pinnacle is a company that we hire as a company to survey the families of the residents. And they survey they ask questions on a scale of 1 to 5, how would you rate nursing? How would you rate laundry? How would you rate dietary? Different questions like that. The two areas we're going to focus on are the food quality and the dining service. Even though those two sections may sound like they just apply to dietary, they really apply to all of us because they'll affect the overall satisfaction. They'll also affect the scores in cleanliness, individual needs, dignity and respect, recommendation to others, and the combined average of the facility. So it really does affect us all. This is what one of the graphs look like. I realize it's kind of hard to see. The only thing, we have two lines that you can probably see from back there. One's a red line and one's a blue line. Along the red line there's a couple other dotted lines. The red line, where that is the corporate average and national average. Where the blue line is, that's the best in class. Only one area, dignity and respect, on this particular graph got the best in class, but we always want to strive for at least that, if not striving for 5. You can see the 5's at the top there. So that's where the number comes from. So there's two parts to our program, the food quality side and the dining service side. The food quality, we want the hot food served hot, we want the cold food served cold, we want proper color, texture, and moisture on the plate. What that means is, like for the green beans, if we don't strain them out and we put them on the plate, the water will run into the hamburger bun, things like that. So really we're looking for overall plate appeal. Garnishes are another thing we do. Sometimes we put them in the food, sometimes it's beside the food. For instance, cauliflower. If you serve cauliflower on a plate, it's just white against a white plate. But if we put some red pepper in it, then we kind of garnished it up. It looks a little better on the white plate. Things like that. So timing of meals is also very important. We need to start on time so the food doesn't sit in the steam table too long to get old. But we also want to watch the time from the dish up to when it's actually served to the resident, because the food will sit out and get cold. So dining service on that side, obviously the timing of the meals is a big part of that too. We want to start on time so that they perceive that they're getting their food right away. From the time of dish up to service is also important on that side too. Same table service is important. There was a question in one of the earlier in-services, so I'll kind of address that now. If you have a 4-top, there's 4 people sitting at the table, but only 3 have arrived for breakfast, let's say, and the 4th one's not there yet. We can still serve those 3, that's considering serving the table at once. And then when the 4th person comes in, we just grab their ticket and serve them real quick, so then that way all 4 are eating at once. So does that make sense? Okay. So drinks, we want drinks served before the meals. If you go to a restaurant, you're going to get your water first, and they'll offer you other beverages if you want iced tea or a beer or whatever. Then they'll start talking about appetizers and food. So we want the same thing here. The look of the dining room is also very important, not only during meals but also in between meals. We want it to look really nice. The noise level is important in the dining room, and some of it we can control, some of it we can't. The things we can control, yelling back and forth, hey, Mr. Smith needs another apple or whatever. What we can't control are when the residents are speaking to each other. So, there's some things we can control and some things we can't. With sanitation, most importantly is hand washing and fingers on the surfaces where they're going to eat and things like that. And the second part of the in-service is going to get into that a little more. So we're going to talk about some strategies to achieve the increased quality. For food quality, we started a new steam table on Station 4 for a few reasons. We wanted the hot food hot and cold food cold. We were doing the food in a big food cart, and everything was getting put inside the cart, whether it was hot or cold, and that's really not good food by the time it's done up there and delivered. Now we have a cold cart, we have a hot steam table, so they're getting those things separated. They're getting the toast made fresh, things like that. So it really has improved food quality for those people there. Our food production manager is going to start a new plate presentation project pretty soon. So hopefully that will increase the look of the plates. And then we're going to start a new restaurant style menu. We're going to start it on Station 3. That's our pilot station for this. It's a pretty big change for us. So we want to make it look like a restaurant, but still be doable in our setting with the logistical problems that we have here. So we're going to pilot it on 3 first, and then after we work the kinks out of it, then maybe we can spread it on to the other stations.
When are you thinking of starting that?
That has not been 100% determined yet. We're just trying to put it all together right now. And then the Strive for 5 calls is something that we're also continuing. So dining service quality, again, steam table on 4, the quality is going to be a lot better for the dining service as well. If somebody said, well, I ordered the chicken, but I really don't want the chicken, I want the meatloaf today. Now instead of calling the kitchen, waiting 10 minutes for it to get up the elevator, now it's right there. We just ask the steam table for it and they get it right away. So the service is a lot better with having that table up there as well. Dietary management is going to focus more on organization in the dining rooms. We're going to focus on the refrigerators, the cupboards, the counters, making sure they're cleaned, organized, you have the things you need in there. The dirty dishes after service is cleaned up is another thing we're going to really focus on. But we're going to also continue our calls for Strive for 5 there too. So we're going to talk about food quality first. This is a nice picture of food, and we'd like all the plates to look like that. Obviously we're not there all the time, and we could get a little better. We've started concentrating on desserts though, with some of these types of desserts, or this is for more a special event I did, but we'd like to do these kind of things more often on the dessert cart. So we're constantly working on trying to get the dessert cart to look a little nicer. That's kind of where we've started. So our goal for the vision becoming reality here, we have a few goals, but it really leads to one ultimate goal at the bottom. We want the hot food always hot. We want the cold food always cold. Correct texture, color, moisture on the plate, superior plate presentation, and extremely timely service for everyone we serve. So that actually, if we can do all those things, it'll help us with our final goal, which is for the residents and guests to be completely happy and satisfied with all of the food they get every time they eat with us. So now we'll talk about dining service a little bit. This picture was taken right after a meal. And as you can see, there's a couple things we would like to improve on this. If I had myself and another person, maybe a guest or something, a family member, come and eat, and we got the 2 orange juices on this tray, let's say. One person's going to get a full orange juice, and the other one's going to get one that looks like it's been drank out of. It hasn't, I'm sure, but that might be the perception. So we have to make sure that we're always giving the same amount in all the glasses. We don't want to make them different sizes. Also, with the juices, the ice is probably melted pretty good and maybe thinned them out a little bit. Maybe they won't taste like they're full concentrate juices, especially if these were poured at the beginning of service and I'm the last resident in the dining room. It might not be the best juice. So we want to pour those a little closer to when they actually come in. And we don't want to over pour so much. Right now there's 6 juices on this tray that we end up throwing away because we can't serve them. So that's a lot of money if you look at every meal, 365 days a year that we could spend doing something else. Maybe we could, make the food a little better, or maybe increase the snack quality or something. Another thing is the water, if you notice, has no ice in it. So obviously we would want ice in our water when we get it. And if I was the last resident that came in and got one of these waters, there would be no ice in it. So there's a few things we could improve on there. Another thing is just the look of the dining room, in between service even. These are just a couple of pictures that I took during the in-between times of things not properly bussed, just stocked up. So I wanted to show everybody what a properly bussed tub looks like. When things are brought back to the dining room, or when we're picking up the dining room, We want the plates stacked nicely, the cups stacked nicely. If a family member saw this rather than the pictures before, it would be a little less offensive. And one of the things we're going to focus on is getting these out of the dining room a little faster so that they don't see them at all. But it does take everybody's help to get them bussed, especially like the room trays and things like that. So proper table setup. This is what the tables look like when they're set up properly. And station 3 we can set up ahead of time. But station 1 and 2, we have activities over there a lot, so we understand we can't get it set up in between meals, but we should have it set up like this before the meal starts. So to make our vision a reality here, some of the goals are so dietary and nursing work together to start service on time. Everybody at the table is served at one time, and then drinks served before food, and of course extremely timely service again. The look of the dining room to be clean and organized, whether it be during the meal or in between meals, and all the dirty dishes placed in the bus tubs neatly and correctly, including all the room trays. All these goals will help us again with the end goal here for the residents and guests to be completely happy and satisfied with the service every time they eat with us. So one of the things that a lot of people don't know about is adaptive equipment, or they might get them confused. So we're going to go over, and I had a lot more pictures on my old laptop, or on my old computer, but when they switched my computer out, I lost a lot of my pictures. So we're concentrating on the 4 that are most commonly mistaken. The sippy cup is the first one here, and the lid, you notice, has a little area for them to sip out of, and then a little vent hole on the other side so it controls how much they sip at a time. This is the nosy cup here. They would drink out of the top part. The bottom part is cut out so that when they tip their glass, it's cut out for their nose in case they can't tip their head back. This one's the Provel cup. These have like a 5 cc or 10 cc reservoir in the lid. So when it's set down, the lid will fill up with that much. They can take a drink and they'll only get the 5 or 10 cc's until they put it back down on the table again. So it controls how much they swallow so they don't aspirate. These are a very expensive cup. And then these are the Kennedy Kennedy cup or anti-spill cup. If they're filled correctly, they won't spill when they're tipped over. This is more of a dignity reason why we use these. If somebody maybe has tremors or something and knocks over their cup a lot and spills, for them it's kind of a dignity issue. So if we can give them something like this, they knock it over, it doesn't spill, they can pick it right back up. Nobody notices a spill on the floor. So that's kind of nice for them. However, it does have to be used correctly. There's a fill line inside. You can only fill it to the fill line. If it goes beyond that, it will still spill. There's in the lid, a big long cylinder that goes down, so the straw has to go all the way to the bottom for it to work. And it does have to be used with a straw. So that's the other one there. So we're going to talk about the Strive for 5 program, what we've done so far. In our department, in dietary, we've done a lot of resident surveys. We've done a lot of ongoing resident surveys, and we are currently doing family member VIP interactions as well. And what they are is we go to the family members who are eating with us and ask them, how was your meal today? Was it a 5 out of 5? If it was not a 5 out of 5, what could we do to improve it to get it there? So that way we are getting their information when they eat with us on how the food was for them and how the service was for them. And then the form, they then go back and fill out afterwards. We obviously don't want them, writing down while we're talking to the guest member. But we just want to find out what the input is from our guests and make sure that they did have a good experience with both our food and our dining room service. We're also doing family member calls. I, as the director, I'm making the initial family member call. I do that a few weeks after they get here, just kind of introduce myself, make sure everything's going okay for them in regards to the food and the dining service. And if there is an issue, then I follow up on it and I call them back and let them know what we've done. But then a few months down the road, we have the dining room manager make a call to them. So that way they get another follow-up call. Even if everything's going fine, we still follow up, just say, hey, we want to make sure things are still going fine, that kind of thing. The food production manager will then make another follow-up call a few months after that. Both with the dining room manager and the food production manager, they're both also offering a free meal to come in and eat with their loved one. On the survey, a lot of times they will say, well, I don't know about the food quality, I've never eaten there, 2. Well, a 2 score is not very good for us. We want 5s. We're striving for 5. So that's one of the reasons we're giving out those free meal tickets. The reason I don't give it out in the initial call is they get one in their admit packet. They have a little bag that they get for a welcoming gift, and it has a meal ticket in there. So that's the reason I don't offer it on my call. There's a family letter that we send out after we do the calls, the follow-up calls. So they also get a family letter that just kind of thanks them for everything and explains our food service a little bit. And then we have a resident suggestion card. We actually have a few different ones, and we put these out randomly. Here's some examples. What can we improve for you in regards to the meals? What would you like to see added to the menu? What's your favorite food, or what's your least favorite food? And what we found with the favorite food and least favorite food is, we'll take liver and onions for example. People love it or hate it. So out of 50 cards, I might have 60 who say they love it and 40 who say they hate it, or vice versa. It's real close to 50-50 on a lot of things. So, but if we do have something like pizza or runza is a favorite food, we get that a lot. So then we put those on the menu more often. And we use these to help develop our menu for the next cycle. We have spring-summer menus for 6 months, and then we have fall-winter menus for 6 months. So every time we change them, we use the data we get from these suggestion cards to help us with our menus. And hopefully that improves the desirability for our menu from the residents. So what's next is what we're going to talk about. Well, we're going to continue a lot of stuff. We're going to continue the initial resident surveys and the initial family calls. We want to continue to follow up with the current residents and current family members, both with calls and surveys. We want to continue the suggestion cards, but we also plan to increase our food quality, our garnishes, and our plate presentation. We want to make that just a little nicer. And we plan to continue to increase our service level in the dining rooms as well. We want more organization and more timeliness of meals. And I did a Strive for 5 in service last year at this time, and I believe that this year we're doing much better in regards to timeliness of meals than we were last year. So we have made strides in that direction, but we always have room for improvement. We want to get better. So ultimately, we need everybody's help for this program. Because family members who visit our facility, they don't see us as separate departments. They see us as Lancaster Rehab Center. So it doesn't matter if we work in nursing or maintenance or dietary or laundry. They see us as Lancaster Rehab Center. And so when they see something good or something not good, they see us as Lancaster Rehab Center usually. So hopefully they always see us as a team taking care of their loved one that's doing a good job. So our goal needs to be to work together to ensure that all our residents and guests have the best experience possible during the meals. And it does take everybody. When people are in the dining room, maybe just getting a glass of water for somebody extra, that asks for it or something like that makes a big difference in their meal experience. So to make this goal a reality, we all need to serve drinks and food on time and quickly to everybody. We also need to keep the dining rooms clean and organized at all times. But we want to show everybody we're proud of our work and that we're all striving for 5. Because like I said before, the scores don't only affect the food service and the dining service. It affects a lot of other areas, including like the combined average and the recommendation of our facility. We obviously want people to recommend our facility so we get more residents. And during the dining room areas, when they give tours and things, just dirty dishes sitting on the shelf could deter somebody maybe from coming, where if we have that all cleaned up or bussed correctly, perhaps it might make a difference. And if nothing else, it looks nicer. So, does anybody have any questions about this part of the in-service? No questions? Okay, well, we're going to move on. Kathy is going to come up next, one of our RDs, and she's going to talk a little more about sanitation. There you go. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Kathy, and I'm a new dietitian. I've been here for about a month now, and I'm responsible for Station 3 and 4. So I realize most of you probably aren't here around meal times, right? Well, because part of this is, that we're preparing for the state survey coming up, and we just want to make sure everybody's up to snuff on the codes and regulations, and so this may or may not apply to you, but it doesn't hurt, because I not only am concerned about the state survey, I just think for flu season, you know, good hand washing is the key to reducing our risk of developing the flu and colds, and it helps to minimize the spread amongst our residents. So why the focus of this is to talk about personal hygiene, especially while serving meals, because we want to reduce bacteria, viruses, and parasites that could be spread within food and beverages. This is most likely transmitted when people are sick. You know, they're not feeling well, they've got a fever, those kinds of things. And probably most importantly, they're not washing their hands properly. We just kind of want to raise our awareness to that, just to make sure we're on top of things. So the most important thing is just making sure that we've got a properly equipped sink. We've got some good soap there, and we probably want some disposable hand towels to wipe our hands. You know, because at home we might use the same old towel over and over again, and that's not really good. Can anybody describe for me the best hand washing technique? What's the first step? Probably you want to get your hands wet. In these pictures, I don't know if you can see them or not, it kind of shows them putting the soap on, but the drawback to putting soap on first is when you put the water on, all the soap goes away. But if you get your hands wet first, then apply the soap, then you lather it up. And how many minutes do you want to have friction on your hands? 20 seconds. We always sing the Happy Birthday song or the Ba Ba Black Sheep song. I know that seems like an incredibly long period of time when you've got you know, an emergency you're trying to take care of, but it's really important, that friction. You know, and there was a discussion yesterday. I made the comment that warm water is the best, you know, especially 100-degree water helps to kill the bacteria more. And, you know, it really doesn't matter the temperature as long as you're washing for 20 seconds. But in the food service arena, we do like warm water. Then you rinse off your hands. And then did you notice on the last square there, they don't turn off the sink. You leave the water running while you dry your hands and then use the towel to turn off, because if you turn it off, well, you've just contaminated your hands again. So leave it running. I'm not concerned about conserving water. We have plenty of water in Nebraska. So sometimes I would turn it off with my elbow, and even I use the towel to open up the door too, because that will really keep your hands cleaner. When do you want to do this good hand washing technique? Well, obviously the most important is after using the bathroom, because 93% of these infections are correlated with the fecal to hand, you know, and that just means we're not washing our hands as good as we should after the bathroom. After coughing and sneezing, and I know it's not flu season yet, but I think it's important to cough into your elbow instead of coughing into your hands. It's a hard habit to break, but I think it's a good habit to get into, coughing into the elbow. After bussing a table, between raw and ready to eat foods. What's the biggest worry about raw foods? What's the most likely contaminant? What food is the riskiest? Chicken, raw chicken, right? We're worried about that salmonella. So any raw meat is suspect, but also we're concerned about fresh lettuce and greens. You know, you've probably heard about the romaine lettuce was contaminated with E. coli. It's probably out in the fields in California. There's wild boars and other critters out there that, you know, they're contaminating, and you know, they can't really wash off the romaine lettuce to kill off that bacteria. So I think just always when you're working with raw meats and fresh vegetables, you want to be particularly fastidious about keeping your hands very, very clean. Obviously, you want to use after handling garbage or dirty equipment, or before and after food prep. So, antiseptics, and you know what? That is not the accurate word. Well, actually, hand sanitizers is because sanitize implies you're killing all the bacteria. You put them into an autoclave and kill everything. Well, those little hand things on the wall, those are just antiseptics, which meaning, that helps to reduce the amount of bacteria. In the food service world, hand washing is absolutely the gold standard, and we cannot rely on these antiseptics for food preparation because it doesn't remove the soil that might be underneath your fingernails. It helps to reduce the bacteria on the surface, but it doesn't go down deep enough for safe food preparation. So, fingernails are probably the number one area on the hand, particularly underneath the fingernail, where, so as we're scrubbing for that friction for 20 seconds, do try to get into underneath your fingernails too, because that's where a lot of the bacteria is harbored. And in the food service world, we don't allow artificial nails or polished nails, because around the polish is where bacteria likes to stay. So if we're up on the floor, I suppose, and we're working with food, you would want to put on gloves, single-use gloves if you have polish on. Really important to cover up, if you've got an angry looking hangnail, it's kind of red and feeling kind of painful, it's probably best to cover that up. Not only do we want to protect our residents from whatever we may have, but also I want to protect you from what the residents may have. So make sure that we cover up any of those wounds, or wear a glove if you can't keep a Band-Aid on it. So I think when we're serving off of the hot cart upstairs, we try to use gloves. Technically you don't have to use a glove because we're using a spoon that never touches the food, but we're just taking an extra degree of precaution there. And if you are using gloves, don't think that you're invincible, because if they're torn or worn, you probably want to change those out every once in a while. So in addition to hand washing, I think we just want to look at the whole person and probably make sure that not only to clean hands, we want to make sure that your hair is restrained, because I think touching our hair is one way that we don't even think about. We bat it back, and then then we keep on with our daily tasks. And so we really want to try to keep the hair restrained or wear a hat, and that's less risk of us touching the hair. Be sure and keep clothing nice and clean, and minimize the amount of jewelry that we are wearing, because some of those big gaudy things, it's really hard to keep those clean. And those really aren't appropriate for work anyway. Plain wedding band is acceptable. So we really don't want to be touching the food at all with our bare hands, if at all possible. Even, I think of when you're opening up a bun to put on the hamburger patty or the sloppy joe fixins, you always want to have a glove to be touching that food. Other beyond the clean clothing, I think a food service server should not be chewing gum or smoking or eating food. It's okay to have a drink in the area, but just make sure it's covered and has a straw in it. So, okay, to finish this out, what we're going to do is a little bit of an activity, and you're going to tell me if this is right or wrong. Are these people doing the right thing? And I want you to point out to me what they might be doing wrong. So, it looks like this lady is on the grill cooking something. And do you see anything on there that you're questioning or might be concerned about? I know it's not very clear.
Is the apron dirty?
The apron is dirty, you're right. It's got a little bit of blood on there, and oh boy, you know, that's something the state is just fastidious about, you know, raw meats, you know, they have to be stored on the lowest level because they don't want that dripping. It's just, it's like the number one way that you're gonna present food bacteria. So yeah, if you've got a dirty apron like that, go get you a different apron. So very good, you win the prize for today. How about this lady? You're right, and I think her thumb, it's not on the plate, you know, it's not very obvious, but yeah, I think you're right. We would rather see them holding it underneath and to the side. You know, I know when I used to do catering, we used to always have, you know, a napkin, you know, that we would serve, so we wouldn't be touching their plate, you know. I realize that napkin went from plate to plate, but yeah, I think, and that's another thing. I think that one of the state surveys in the past was they commented that you don't want to be touching the top of a beverage, you know, because that's where the resident is going to be drinking off of. So you really want to grab that glass from the side and not grabbing it from the top. Silverware, you don't want to do the head of the spoon, you know, you only want to touch especially when they're, you know, wrapping. Well, you guys don't wrap silverware, but we do. And it, you know, we shouldn't touch the forks tines or the head of the spoon or the knife. If it's going to touch their food, you want to minimize that. What is good? What is she doing good? Can you see anything that she is doing positive? Very good. Her hair is pulled back. She's wearing a hair restraint on top of that. Well, either a hat or a hairnet. So she's done a nice job to get that out of her face. She's not going to be touching her hair to get it out of the way. So very good. Smoking, what else is he doing? The sideburns are just out of style. We don't want that. So that one's too obvious there that he shouldn't be smoking. Somebody noticed he has a tie. I don't know why you'd be cooking with a tie on, but they did studies on doctors, and that was like the #1 dirtiest thing ever. Because who washes a tie? You never, a silk tie? Come on. And I don't think you dry clean them. Well, I don't know. I'm not a guy. I don't wear a tie, but yeah, that's why they've gone mainly to scrubs. And a lot of the physicians are going there. They've kind of gotten rid of lab coats as well for the same reason. You know, because I remember when I first started 20-some years ago, I didn't wash my lab coat but once a month, you know, so that's just too long. So it's probably best that we do the scrubs, then we take it off, you know, and minimal transmission. How about this one?
No gloves and touching the hands.
No gloves on there.
Her fingernails look long.
Yeah. The fingernails.
Yeah, they are a little longer. That's a good point. You know, when I was preparing the slide, they said, good, she's not wearing jewelry. That's a good thing. But I'm glad you guys look at it with a critical eye. And yes, well-trimmed nails, that's probably just in general a good reminder. And, you know, again, we wear gloves just for added source of protection up on the floor. But since she's going to only be touching the end of that ladle, and it shouldn't be touching the food at all. And finally, what do you think about this one?
It's dirty. Gloves, knives, and what else? What's that?
You guys are really good, because on the slide, the notes under the slide, they said this is good. They've covered it, and there is a straw. But I think you're more savvy, because yeah, it's dirty. There's looks like pieces of chicken there. That doesn't look good to me. And we would, I would, if I were doing a walkthrough survey, I would try to find out whose drink is that and do a corrective action, because that really shouldn't be in the food production area or food service area. That should be in the break room or somewhere else, discreet, so residents can't see it, surveyors can't see it. So I think that we have two handouts, and I think there's just sanitation rules and regs, just a refresher. We always want to wash our hands regularly. That's the single most important thing for minimizing the colds and flus. Washing your hands is way superior to using the hand antiseptics, because the food, the state doesn't really want you, because you may think you're safe, just, you're used to that with your working with residents, you do that quick between rooms, but when it comes to food, when you walk into the food service area and you're ready to begin serving food, I would prefer that you do a good, nice hand washing. Because the state doesn't know if we're washing our hands unless they see it, so that's, so. Any
Thank
questions,
you.
comments, concerns? This is our chance to kind of raise issues, because I think we've had some good comments these last in-services of things that are coming up, so, and you don't always get to see, the us during the days, so. Any concerns that are on your
I
mind?
want to say something like Nick said earlier about the drinks, because when I went to Station 5, and especially it's better when the residents come down, then that's the time you serve the drinks. Because I saw like two trays full of orange juice and chocolate milk. I have to throw them away. It's a waste of.
Yeah, and if you can
Yeah.
find out who's doing it, or because is it common practice that we pour that whole tray?
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
I hate warm milk. I just hate it.
Two
And
dining rooms.
what's that?
Station 5 has 2 dining rooms,
Uh-huh.
so they don't have they gotta take a tray to the other dining room.
Well, it's just don't, because sometimes I'm guilty of it too. I want to do the same thing all at once so I don't have to do it. But, I would prefer that we just pour a smaller amount.
Mhm.
That way it's going to be of better quality. It's going to be, because cold food's cold. You can't do that if you pour it and, it sits for half an hour.
Yes.
So, I know there's something to be said for being efficient, but I also would think of how would you want to be served? I would want a nice, fresh, cold
Yeah.
milk. And so a lot of times we don't know these things unless the topic is raised. So just something to think about. Well, I thank you for your time and attention today, and we'll see you next year.